Hi everyone, thank you for coming. This is always a little bit awkward when I'm talking to people and I actually can't see them
Right.
because I do like to look at people when I talk. So this is all new to me, but thank you for coming and hopefully you'll find this interesting. But a little bit about me. My name's Kelly Bushill and I've worked in social care now for about 20 years. I started as a support worker, never done any type of support work before and was lucky enough to work for a great organisation. So for me, the introduction to health and social care was really, really lovely. I got to know the people I was supporting, and then that's where I found that my real passion was for working with people that needed our support and needed that support to progress within their lives. I loved working with the families. I loved working with the commissioners. And I'm a very chatty person and sometimes too much. So yeah, I can talk forever sometimes. And I found that I really engaged with the people that I worked with as well, are the support workers. And one of the hardest things that I found working in social care was being led by managers that just weren't supportive. And it was really hard because as a support worker, you sometimes work on your own, sometimes you work in pairs, sometimes it's 3 to 1. And I found that the hardest times was when we had incidents, and you were back then, you were just kind of told to brush it off, get on with it, you're fine. And actually, at the time, you kind of was, but it wasn't until afterwards you'd feel a little bit like, did I do everything right? Are they happy with me? Is the person that I'm supporting okay? What can I do to avoid that? And you doubted yourself a lot, to be honest. And when you had a type of manager that just didn't really bother engaging with you, you found that really hard. So you found that you turned to your work colleagues, you turned to your family. And for me, that was a real eye opener. That was kind of, we're missing something here. And I always promised myself that if I was ever in a position where I was supporting staff teams and I was a manager, that I would never treat them how I've been treated, because I look back now and it really did impact on how I was as a person, my confidence. And some days I thought, do you know what, I just can't do this anymore. But I actually just got on with it, become resilient, and just worked hard. And then I was given the opportunity to become a senior support worker. Um, and that was hard because, again, I didn't have any support. There's your work, there's your team, crack on with it. So I had to learn on the job, didn't really have any guidance. So I kind of winged it for a bit, I suppose, is the only way I can describe it. But what I found was that the teams needed extra support and they looked for you for guidance. And at that point, some of the guidance they were looking for, I wasn't that experienced in. So the only thing that I could relate to was how they were feeling. And that was the best way for me to engage with them and talk to them about how they're feeling. And sometimes the conversations could be 5, 10 minutes, could be longer. But actually, when that staff member turns around to you and says, "Thank you so much for that, I feel so much better," I thought I must be doing something right here. So I'm going to go with this. And then I got my first registered manager role. And again, that was very daunting, going through the whole CQC interviews, etc. And a couple of times I thought, what am I doing? I can't do this. I can't do this. But at that time, I had a really supportive manager. So that really helped. They coached me. I had great support. And I found that when you get that support, you're more willing to put more effort in and you're more willing to progress. And I think as managers, we can miss that because we're so bogged down with the day to day KPIs, making sure we're hitting the targets, making sure we're not using loads of agency, we're keeping the costs down. But equally, we've got to keep our teams and the people we support safe. And it's a huge responsibility. And if you're feeling quite isolated, that can be really difficult. So I remember I was talking to a psychologist right at the beginning of my career, and she explained about Maslow. And I thought, what on earth is Maslow? It just didn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to bring up a slide just to talk you through that and how that really helped shape who I was as a manager and as a person. So bear with me, just going to share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, well, just yeah, click on presentation. That's fab.
Lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. So this is when it all clicked for me, and as I said, it actually works. So Maslow's hierarchy of need, I'm sure some of you are really aware of this, but how many of us actually put this into practice? We know about it, we know it works, but if we take this from a team approach, you get so much more results, that I found anyway. And right at the bottom, it's about your comforts, it's about feeling safe, it's about having your basic needs met. And if we don't provide that to our teams, like giving them breaks, making sure that they're drinking throughout the day, making sure that they're having time for lunch, making sure that they're getting enough time off work, then as we know, you can become quite exhausted, and you're not going to be at your best. Safety. You've got to make people feel safe at work. You've got to make sure that you look out for them, you protect them where you need to, give them that time, making sure that they're working in an environment that they want to be in. Because if you don't have that, again, your team's not going to engage with you. They're just going to come in, do the job, go home, and you're not going to get any progression, or you're not going to get anything more from that. Love and belonging. For me, that's so important, because I like to know my teams. I like to know who I work with. I like to know about their families. I like to know about what they like to get up to, what's their interests, because I feel you can't engage a team unless you know that person, because where do you go from that? You can't relate to anything. You're almost cutting that person cold. Esteem. It's about looking at each individual and really looking at their qualities. So for instance, I had a staff member that did have mental health issues, and it was diagnosed. And of course we did the risk assessment around it, etc. But on their manic days, it was about finding things that they can do to keep them going. And it's about adapting the work for that individual, and the satisfaction that person gets because you've adapted something for them makes such a difference. And their self-esteem is so much better. They're much more engaging, they're more respectful, they treat each other respectfully, and vice versa. And it works both ways. And I feel once you've hit all them barriers, then you can go into the self-actualization, which is where your team are really highly performing. Now we all know it doesn't stay that way, and some of these little things at the bottom will creep in and will affect that individual. But by you knowing your team, it means that you can pick that up. For me, because I know my teams and I know when they're having a good day and a bad day, I can pick that up really early, and I can actually say, do you know what, are you okay? And it's really worthwhile doing that, because if you don't, that staff member could feel really awful all day. That could then pass on to your other staff members, and then before you know it, you've got a team that's really not motivated. And it's a lot harder to bring a team out of that than actually pick up on the signs from your team that they're not okay. And as managers, we all say, well, we haven't got time for that. We just need to make sure that this is done, that is done. 5 minutes, a cup of coffee. It doesn't take a lot. And I can tell you now, it will make your job so much easier, and it will make the service so much better, because your team will trust you. And I've always been the type of person that, you know, you can say the door is always open, but what does that actually mean? Because we can say that quite flippantly, but is it? And I think it's quite unrealistic to say, oh, my door's always open, because we know that's not true. But actually, if you say to your staff members, look, I'm here if you need to talk to me, just let me know and we can book some time in. And that way it's so much more, and you can dedicate that time to that person. So for me, that's really important. And I hope that makes sense. But to me, that's how I've always worked since I've known about the Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. It was kind of like, that absolutely makes sense. You know, we spend so much time relating it to the people that we support, but actually we forget about the people that we're meant to be supporting, which is our teams as well. So for me, I've had a couple of leaders that haven't been great. And as it says, qualities of bad leader, you don't take feedback well, you don't believe in growth, you're being overly conservative, permitting negative gossip, people communication and strategy, closed-mindedness, assigning blame, inconsistency, being too slow to adapt, and micromanaging. And that's the biggest thing for me, because I had a manager that would micromanage, and you would never feel confident to be able to make decisions, because you'd feel that you'd have to go to that person to get that about the slightest things. And I think if you support your team to grow, then you can absolutely enhance their learning and their skills, and you don't have to micromanage. And in fact, the flip side of that is that they will want to do more and they will be more motivated. Can't accept criticism. So I've gone to managers in the past and said, look, I don't feel that the way we do this is the best way. And the replies would normally be, well, we've always done it this way and that's the way it's got to stay, it's policy. So straight away you get shut down, and for you just think, do you know what, I'm never going to raise anything again. Lack of transparency. So for me, that's probably one of the biggest ones. So as a team and as a service, when things are not going great, some people can just go, do you know what, it's fine, everything's okay, but actually it's not. And you need to talk about that as a team, and you need to all understand that. So for instance, a scenario, if your KPIs are low or whatever it is that the organisation expects from you, it's about looking at them and involving the whole team, because it works and the teams will get more involved if you do that positively, and also looking at the areas that they can help and let them be confident and let them come to you with solutions, because you get so much more of a team effort. And then when you actually reach the goals, it's so much better and you feel so rewarded by it. Not listening, again, is another big one. It's about, yeah, that's fine, not a problem, I'll deal with it. But then you don't. So straight away, you're losing that trust with the staff member, and you're not going to get consistency from them. You're not going to get commitment. Dismissing other ideas. Why would we do that? If people are coming to you with ideas, listen to them, because sometimes it really, really works. And you can share that across the team, and then others will feel valued, and they'll also want to bring something to the group. And again, you're creating teamwork. Value and experience over potential. Absolutely. It's so important. Ego, biased, working 24/7. That's never a good thing. You've got to have your breaks. You've got to take some time out. And it's about you creating your team and giving them the confidence, so that actually when you're not there, they can still function, they can still run. I've had it before where I've gone into a service and supported another service where another manager's been on holiday, and they've gone into meltdown, and they're completely like, we don't know what to do. Our manager always does this. Our manager always makes these decisions. And that's not healthy. Your team still need to function whether you're there or not. It shows good leadership. Lack of empathy. So if somebody's struggling and you just brush it off, actually, if you sit with that person and talk to them, it makes and helps them feel so much better. Not flexible. Again, we see this quite a lot. You interview people for a 36-hour contract. They'll say, yeah, that's absolutely great. But they'll say, oh, but I need to do this, or I need to leave at this time, etc. And quite often we say, yeah, that's okay in an interview. And then when it actually comes to them then saying, oh, remember, my shift pattern needs to change a little bit, they go, oh, no, we can't do that. Actually, yes, we can. I feel that if we're more flexible with the people that work for us, the more flexibility we're going to get from them, and it can work. And no creativity and innovation. Again, you've got to help your team to be creative. It's so important. For instance, I set up a newsletter, and that really worked because we got the people we supported involved, we got the teams involved. We'd talk about any new staff members that have started, any achievements, anything that we'd done really well as a service. And that was fantastic because everybody was waiting for the newsletter to come out and they were really excited to see it. And for me, that was real engagement. And this is a big one. Why are you late? I don't want to hear your excuses. That is such stereotypical. And quite often if a staff member's late, yeah, the team's like, why are they not here on time? And it can cause a bit of chaos sometimes, as we all know. But actually it's about you taking that time to talk to that person. First of all, they step in, that they are going to be completely like, oh, I'm late, oh my god, oh, and they're going to be in such a panic, and then they're going to support somebody and they're not going to be at their best, which we want the best for the people that we're supporting. So actually, how about sitting down with that staff member, making them a cup of coffee and just getting them to sit and go, breathe, are you okay? Has everything okay this morning, or is it just gone completely wrong? And I find by doing that, your team member and your teams will recognize that, and they almost feel a sense of, oh, I don't want to let anybody down. And by doing that, you're unpicking any issues that they may have in their personal life that you could possibly change. And for instance, I had a staff member that was always late, and the previous manager was taking them through disciplinary because of it. So I spoke to the individual, we unpicked why they was late, what was going on, and they'd said, I've asked so many times, can I start 30 minutes later and I'll stay 30 minutes after my shift to make up the time. And what it was that she had to get her children to school because her husband had left her. She'd been left with loads of bills, loads of debt, and she really needed a job. And she was absolutely didn't know what else to do, and she loved her job to the point that she felt like just leaving because she couldn't accommodate what was expected of her. But actually what we did is we looked at her shifts, we changed them a little bit, and that person was never late again. And actually she felt so much better and within herself that, yet again, that comes to the Maslow. It's about supporting that person from the very basic to actually get them to engage. Traits of a good leader. So absolutely self-motivated, care for others. There's loads on here that I can absolutely agree with. Self-awareness. You've got to be aware of how you're presenting and how you're supporting. Accountability. We're all accountable. And actually, a lot of us think, do you know what? We're accountable for the people we support, and we're accountable to CQC, and we're accountable to the authorities and everybody else that, you know, we're accountable to. But actually, we're accountable to our teams and our staff, and we're accountable to the parents. And if you don't get that right, then your team's not going to move forward, and you're not going to have a good team, and you're not going to be able to motivate your team. Tech savvy, that does always help, but it's, for me, it's not a massive thing. To me, it's more about the personal touch. It's about understanding your staff members, like I've said before, and it's about really supporting them and understanding their needs as well. Influence. Whatever you do, you are influencing to your staff members, and they will reflect on that, and they will lead by example. So if you're always late, or you can't be bothered, then your team's not going to want to be bothered. And I see that so many times where, look, we just need to get this done. But actually, how about pull your sleeves up and help as well, and do it as a team, because you'll get much more respect if you can show your team that you're in it and you're all in it. Delegation. Another thing is that as a manager, you think you've got to do everything. No, you haven't. In your teams, I can guarantee that you will have team members that you didn't even know some of their skills that they have. And it's about learning about each individual. So when you're meeting with that individual on a one-to-one or a supervision or whatever you're doing, it's about talking about not just about work, but about things they've done in the past, things that they enjoy. And actually, I found that I could delegate certain tasks to the team members, but also it would help them prepare if they wanted to progress as well. And by doing that, you get to see the strengths within the team, and everybody has a strength, but you've just got to find it, and you've got to take the time to find it. Decision making. Yeah, that absolutely falls on us. But actually, again, that comes into problem solving. So if a decision needs to be made, and it's a bit of a tricky one, involve your team, talk to them, because as a team, you can generally figure that out. And it yet again brings the team closer together. And empower others. And that's so important, to empower the people that you're working with, because had somebody have not believed in me or given me the opportunity, I wouldn't be where I am. And I'm so lucky that somebody's seen that in me and give me that opportunity. So Richard Branson, absolutely love this guy. And I love the way he respects his employees. I love the way that he's just so natural and so normal, considering he's quite a high figure that we all know, but he's just so basic. He's a human being. He is. I absolutely love the guy. And it's true what he says. Great leaders are great listeners. Who knows their best asset is the people they work with. And it's so true, because as a team, you've got to make sure that your teams feel valued, make sure that you're doing everything you can to make them feel that they can do this. And even if they're struggling, or even if they've done something that isn't right, it's about talking that through with them and helping them understand where it may have gone wrong, how can we put that right, and what support do you need from me? Because we're quite often very quick to go, well, this is why that happened. But actually it's not. There could be other things to that, and it's about unpicking it. Hardship brings people closer together if you share it. Again, so true. I've been in job roles where we've had a major incident or we've had a crisis, and we kind of go, what do we do? What do we do? But actually, when you all work together and you're all on the same page, you can get through that, and it makes you stronger as a team. And this was something that I've always used. It's called the 3-2-1 with your team. So obviously we have supervisions, we have appraisals, we have the mandatory parts of our role that we have to do. But for me, I use this quite often. So if a staff member's not feeling great and you want to just have a quick check-in, see how they're doing, I get them to reflect. I say, right, tell me 3 things that are going really well for you at work. And do you know what? That's probably one of the hardest things for your team members to recognise, because straight away, as you know, you can meet with team members and they'll say, this is wrong, that's wrong, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with that, which is all really great feedback. But actually, what is going well? Let's talk about that. What do you really like about your role? Then once we establish that, and sometimes they need prompts, you know, and as a manager, you should be able to recognise the good things that you've noticed that is going well about that staff member. Then we go on to 2 things that are okay, but could be better. And that gives you an insight as to, okay, so we don't feel the handover's great. It's good because it's a structure, but we think these need adding because they keep being forgotten. And it's about unpicking that. And that's, to me, that's really, really helpful. And one thing that is bad and it just needs to go. And it's exactly what it says, you know, it is causing trouble, it doesn't work, and our job would be so much easier if we didn't have to do that. And you'll find if you do that with a couple of members and the whole team, eventually you'll start to pick up a pattern and a theme within the service that you're managing. And that will really help you then bring the team together in a team meeting and go, okay, so this is what we've done. I've talked to a number of people. This is what we're recognising. So actually, should we all do an action plan together to get through this? And what can we do as a team to make this better for you? And for me, that shows that you're really valuing the people that you're working with. And if somebody had done that way back when I was working with a couple of managers that I didn't particularly have any respect for, had somebody have done that with me, I'd have felt really valued, and I'd thought, do you know what? They really do care about how we feel. We're not just a number. We're not just here to fill a role. And for me, that just it just works. So I'd really advise, if you've ever got a team that you've gone into and that you know something's not functioning right, you just can't quite put your finger on it, do a quick 3, 2, 1, because it's amazing the patterns you pick up on.
Love it. Thank you, Kelly. That was fantastic. I don't know if anyone else hears the same, but there were so many points that you were making. I was like, yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? One thing I've noticed is that we do, whichever service you're working in, I mean, specifically me, I've worked in complex services, and it is hard. It is. You feel like you're on call 24/7, and 9 times out of 10 you are. And if you're a good manager and you really care about your service, you don't want your team to feel that they're on their own if you've experienced that yourself. And for instance, you know, I've had to do some debriefs with some very serious incidents where the teams have just, the adrenaline has just run, and they can't think. They've dealt with the situation fantastically well, but at the end of it, they're doubting everything, and they're going, I don't know what to do. I just, but actually, it's at that point that you have that initial check-in. And for me, a debrief isn't just one meeting. It's about doing that slowly to the person that you're supporting, and really unpicking that. So you have your first initial check-in, and you're checking in saying, how are you? And at the time they might go, yeah, I'm absolutely fine. But then meet with them in 24, 48 hours later, and I can tell you now, they'll have a lot more to say, and they'll feel, oh, well, do you know what? I did go home, and then I reflected on this, and I think I could have done this better. And, you know, I beat myself up over it. And then I was anxious and worried about coming back into work, because what if it happens again? And I'm not sure I can cope with that. So it does benefit if you kind of drag that out a bit longer, because you get so much more feedback, and that is something that then you can then work with your team, and you can then look at, actually, does that person just need further training in that? Do they need a bit more confidence building? Do they need more resilience training? And you can identify what areas that person may be lacking. And I remember we was involved in an incident that happened, and afterwards the team were exhausted. They were all tired, and they were just really like, oh, that was hairy, that was hard work. So do you know what? Got in my car, I said, I'll be back in 10. And they were like, where's she going? Went to the chip shop and ordered people loads of chips, sausages, battered sausages, burgers, whatever it was. And I come back full armed, stinking of chips and fish. And we put it down, and I made everybody a drink. And I went, right, just don't say anything. Just talk about whatever you want to talk about, but just eat and chill.
Yeah. Yes.
And by doing that, I think they were shocked. They were just like, really? Oh, you know, all fish and chips, brilliant on Kelly, happy days. But the reward from that was that during that time of eating their fish and chips, they started to unpick areas that a debrief naturally would unpick, but it was done in a natural way. It wasn't, right, let me sit with my, right, did you follow all process?
Did you do wrong?
Yeah, it really was. And that never works, because if someone does that with me, I'll go, well, yeah, I think so, possibly. Oh, I'm not sure. And you feel like you're on the spot. But they started to unpick that themselves, and they started to say, well, maybe we need to consider this, or maybe we need to phone ahead, or maybe, and actually they were absolutely right. And then after that, they were raring to go, and they were ready to go.
That's really nice, sort of facilitating them problem solving themselves, as opposed to it being, you know, you coming in and pointing fingers and put, you know, placing blame upon certain individuals, which I think sometimes is how that sort of works out. It's really interesting stuff, and I really respect you, Kelly, for being able to sort of take this approach in terms of your management style, because I know, having been in social care for nearly 20 years now, it's there's been a big change, isn't there, for managers in terms of what their roles are like. And well, certainly when I first started, the manager would be in a position that we describe these days as more of a practice lead, where you're sort of at the front leading. And I think someone's in the chat made that distinction between a boss and a leader.
Yeah.
what you're describing your management style as being is much more of a leader, as in sort of, you know, you follow and do this.
Yeah.
But actually, I think a lot of managers these days have other demands now that are being introduced, where there's much more focus on business development and sort of some of the administration and all of those kinds of things. How have you found that Kelly? Are you still feeling you've got time to devote to those?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've kind of worked that, at the moment I'm an area manager for Grey Healthcare, so you know I manage the whole of the South, and for me I've always been a registered manager, so I've always been at the service. So for me the biggest part of that was working from home, as you can see, office/sleeping bedroom. And I thought, how am I going to engage with teams? I can't, like, this is not normal to me. I'm not going out to the services every day. How am I going to build that relationship with my team? And I was thinking, how am I going to do that? But actually what I did was I set up fortnightly. They started off weekly because I was new to the role. I set up weekly workshops with, so we have locality managers, which manage a certain area, and then we have team leaders, managers that manage the individual packages. So what I did is I set up a workshop for the team leaders and managers to attend. And one of my first sessions, because I noticed, was around using Outlook and your calendar. Because we'd have people not turning up, or they'd forget about something, and I'd be like, okay, there's clearly a need here. So I unpicked that in the workshop and just showed them how to do group emails. So you're not, bless them, they were sat there typing in each person's name to send an email to the team. So it was little bits like that, and then I got to know them individually through obviously the screen. But actually my best part of it is going out to the packages now, which I can do, and getting to see the people that we're supporting, but also getting to know the teams. And bit by bit, I've been there 3 and a bit months now, I really feel that I've got a good grasp of the teams that I'm supporting. And we've put them workshops to fortnightly now, because they said they'd rather have it for a full hour fortnightly, and they then decide the week before a topic of something that they're struggling with, and that's what we talk about. So the next one we're talking about is resilience, time management, and how we can best utilize our time, because the time is a big issue, isn't it? And people feel that they have to have their phone on 24/7, but actually you have on call, and everybody does part of that on call. So you're allowed to turn your phone off to have a break.
Yeah, you're going to be the best when you give yourself time to rest and recuperate, and you're at your best, aren't you, at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. And I found that really helps. And sometimes we feel guilty, but do you know what? If we're not at our best, we're not going to give that to our team. We're not going to be happy. We're going to be quite sad. We're going to be exhausted. And you're not going to do anybody justice by doing that. So you just need your time out, and you need to book your leave, which I've found, because historically I've worked myself to the point where actually I left health and social care because I was so exhausted. And I went into a young offenders prison, and that was a reality shock. But do you know what? I needed that time to come out and reflect and go, that's not the best way to do it. And it really helped me understand that there is always time, and it's about you prioritizing what you need to do. And sometimes if you don't hit a target, but you've prioritized the people you support and you've prioritized your team, that's more valuable sometimes.
Yeah, and what a lot of sort of reflecting upon in what you've been talking about, and we'll go to some of the chat comments in a minute, so it's not just me, but we talk about in our system-wide training that we deliver, the Timpson's model of the sort of organizational structure. And Timpson's, the key cutting sort of business, which is far removed from social care, but their model is they do it upside down, where actually often you see an organization's hierarchy with, you know, CEO, and then your directors and various and then at the bottom you've got your frontline direct support staff. Right? What Timpson's do is sort of turn it on its head, where obviously the most important person of all is the customer. So for us, obviously, that'd be the people that we're providing support for. And then the second most important people in that sort of hierarchy are the people providing the direct support, the day-to-day direct support. So for Timpsons, it's the people who are running the shops, actually the front facing customer, and what they then build is the structure to support them, as opposed to a structure to manage and direct those people. It's actually a structure they're there to support the people that are sort of higher up on that hierarchy, who are the customers and the front facing staff. And that feels like, for me, that's very much what you're doing, is you're there to support rather than simply to direct and those kinds of things.
And it's about being calm, isn't it? And it's about, I think, to be honest, looking back now, I think I am really good in a crisis, and I don't know whether that's because I'm quite blasé sometimes, whether that's a good or bad thing, but I just kind of go, okay, right, so what do we need to do? And I kind of rationalize it, and by being calm with that approach and not going, oh no, what's that, right, we need to do this, because then you're going to get everybody in a pickle. But actually, you just got to go, okay, right, you've got to be quite clear, but you've got to be very calm but quite assertive, and right, what do we need to do now? How do we need to do this? Everything else can come later, but actually what you need to do is manage this situation. And actually, one of my team members that I work with now actually said, the fact that I can phone you and dealing with one very complex package, said, oh, I know that all I need to do is pick up the phone and go blah, 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 and you just go, okay, right, what do we need to do now then?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'll work through. I mean, most of the things in the chat are people sort of saying, "Yeah, I agree," sort of,
good start.
Experiences. But I sort of wrote down, and I think a few people responded to your point about the door being open. The doorways being open. I think you're so right, and Rob's put as well in the chat. Yeah, I think the doorways open puts a responsibility to check in on the employee rather than on the manager themselves, and it's a responsibility of the leader, of the manager, to be doing those checkings. And I suppose it's you're setting yourself up to fail in a sense, aren't you, if the door could be open.
You always said that I could come and talk to you at any point. You're in the middle of an MDT. I've been there. It's you're setting yourself up to fail, and you're devaluing that person by saying something and then going, well, actually no, I didn't mean that, but only at certain times.
And Anthony Donegan has pointed out, Tony Osgood, it's a big name in positive behaviour support. He says something along the lines of, an open door policy is all well and good, but it suggests that the leader is still in the office, not showing and doing. So again, it's you're not doing that practice leadership in that kind of role.
No, you're not.
So some people, again, like me, who were writing down the 3-2-1 this sort of slide. I thought that's a really, we use some similar ones, 4+1 questions, and those kinds of things to facilitate some of that. But it's so important, isn't it? I think that you focus on the things that are going well, and get people to have a bit of a think about some of the things that are.
And it puts the ownership on them as well, because as managers, we don't always have the answers. And it's about being really clear with your team and saying, do you know what? I don't have all the answers, but we can look at it together, and I'm sure we can find the solution. So you're not also saying that you know everything, because you don't.
No.
You've got to be a jack of all trades. You have to be. You've got to be a counsellor. You've got to be something's broken, you've got to try and fix it. You have so many hats that you need to wear on a day-to-day basis that you need to be able to share that.
Yes, completely. Jane Johnson has asked, so it would be interesting to see what you think about this, but can leaders learn these skills, or do they have to either have it or not? And then she's built upon that by asking if you've got any recommendations of any training.
Yeah, so for me, I think when you've got a manager that is really not able to reflect on themselves or understand how their leadership can affect other people, I think it's always good to, I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's where you can do a screening of that person where they answer loads of questions about themselves, and there's a company that actually does that, and then you can take that to the individual. I can find out and share that after the group, actually, because her name's Sue Murray, and she was fantastic, and I follow her on LinkedIn, and she did an overview of me as a manager, and it showed you what colour you fitted into, because there's a colour for each different person. And I think once you get that back from that person doing, you can then start to look at that realistically on how that shows in their work. And it's all done in a positive way, so they don't feel like they're being, you know, singled out. But when they reflect on their own work practices and why they possibly make them decisions and why they are the way they are, it unpicks them as a person that actually they can move forward from. But check her out, yeah, Sue Murray on LinkedIn. She is fantastic, and she's really helped some of the teams that I've worked with as well.
That's useful. Yeah, we'll look around. Fab. How do you prompt, ask, encourage a manager to take a different approach and listen to suggestions? We get people to change their.
Yeah, for me, I've done that as a one-to-one coaching. So initially, I've met with them for a supervision. Again, use the 3-2-1, and sort of unpicked that bit by bit, and then look at the root cause of that. And sometimes it could be that there's something not right at home, or there's something they're struggling with, or they lack confidence, or something's affected them that they don't realize that they're then portraying that out. And it's about having that personal conversation with that person. Obviously, if you've tried all of that and you've exhausted all the efforts, then yes, you're going to have to look at capability. But ultimately, I do believe that you can turn it around if that person is passionate. And it's about looking at when they first started to where they are now. Has there been any significant changes or patterns in that person, and when that was? And by knowing your team, you probably would have picked up on that. But sometimes you're popped into a service as a manager and you go, okay, it's time to run now. You're the manager, crack on. And you've got to unpick it all. But I've done it in the past where I've worked alongside that person quite closely, and that does always help.
Yeah, and like you say, that I suppose it's about, isn't it, seeing the strengths in people, because some people are going to find certain aspects difficult and challenging always, aren't they, because they're not necessarily in their skill set. It's about, you know, really targeting people's strengths and giving people opportunities to use those strengths, isn't it?
It is, and sometimes we do have team members where actually they're not in the right job, and we also need to recognize that. You know, we can't support everybody, we can't change everybody, and it is about you as an individual whether you want to do that or not. And I've had to give them ultimatums. Well, this is what we expect, this is what we've done, this is how we've supported you. You now need to make a decision. Is this career right for you? And once you have to draw the line somewhere.
Yes, that is sometimes the case, isn't it? Sophie has, she works in a clinical team, and a big part of her job is going to support staff through training and modelling on PBS plans. Any tips for engaging a staff team when you're a new person coming into the service? Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're that moment, aren't you, Elizabeth Kelly?
Yeah, and that's what I did. I don't know how easy it is for you, but I also work with a clinical team as well. We have a full clinical team, and we all tend to work remotely with the teams, and that's when I set up these little workshops and check-ins. And I do find that does help. But also, if you've started with a new team, set up meetings where you can actually meet them on a one-to-one 30-minute check-in, 30-minute conversation. How are you? I'm Kelly, nice to meet you. And start to build that. And that will take some time. I still haven't got round to everybody, but I am making my way, and I've started to make them connections. So it is about making that connection with that person, because people won't naturally just come to you. They won't.
And I suppose just to build on that, so we sort of that's what I do quite a lot of, is coming in as a new face into an organization and trying to provide guidance from a PBS perspective. And I get one of your first goal needs to be building up rapport with that team, isn't it? That therapeutic rapport with the team that you're supporting.
Because as you know, sometimes you get, oh, here's another new person.
Yes, and I think sometimes
you get that.
They might see you as someone coming in to do things to them and to do things.
Or they're going to change it. They're going to do this, and you've got to start on that even keel. Yeah,
getting people involved in developing the plans alongside you, I think, is really important.
So true.
Yeah. And just to build on the point earlier on around how we prompt managers to change. So Georgina was the person who asked that question. She's just made it clear that she'd like to also ask about when you're being managed by that manager, how can you encourage change in them when you're not necessarily in a position of.
Yeah, and I have had that with an old CEO many years ago that I worked with, and I don't even know how to put her into words. It was horrific. But I had to stand and believe that what I was doing was right. And it takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of confidence to actually say to that person, do you know what? I don't feel this is right. And these are the reasons why. And again, if you're not getting that response, we need to follow the fact that you need to go higher than that. And I get that with some organizations are quite small and it's really difficult to do that. And eventually I worked for this organisation for 6 years. I managed to get all services to outstanding and I got treated absolutely horrendously. And I had to just go, do you know what? I'm leaving. And sometimes you have to do that. And I had to find an organisation that I fitted with my values and my beliefs. And if they're not able to listen to your opinions, then for me straight away that's not the organisation I want to work for.
Yeah, which obviously is a tough choice, isn't it? But
yeah, it is
your own well-being and these kinds of things. Fab. Awesome. I think I've worked my way through the chat. Daniel's just I think that was about an earlier point, but 360 assessment is the point he's making in relation to reviewing people's performance as another potential tool that could
definitely and I think there's so many tools out there that you can use, and you know, even some of Helen Sanderson's stuff, although that's 9 times out of 10 directly at the people we support, but we can also use that within our teams as well, so I have found that quite useful.
There's lots of resources sort of available through Helen Sanders, isn't there, that sort of person-centered planning tools, aren't they? But you can
adapt them.
Definitely. Wonderful. Again, so it's 2 Georginas, so I'm just going to confuse them. She's totally agree. I left a large organisation last year after working for them for many years, feeling undervalued. Now work for an amazing small company and definitely valued. Oh, it's so nice to feel like that, isn't it, Georgie?
It is, and that is, and sometimes you have to make that decision because it's about you and what you value and what you want to bring to that organisation. And if they value as an individual, they will listen to you and they will support you.
Yes, completely. Wonderful. Another one. No, I have another question just appeared. How do you build the rapport back up with a service once you've had to put a safeguarding in? Ooh, interesting.
Okay, a few of them myself has happened, and it's just about transparency, isn't it? It's about having that open conversation and talking that through. Again, it's being honest with each other about how you're feeling, and it's about being open about that, and it hopefully will resolve itself. Again, if that person respects you as an individual and believes in you, then they will do everything they can to support that.
So that
can be tricky, and that can be such a hard conversation. I'm sure we've all had loads of hard conversations with managers, teams, but actually you just got to sometimes open that box and just go, this is what it is and we need to talk about it.
Openness and transparency, really key. Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think we worked through most of the things that came up in the chat. As I say, lots of people just agreeing with things that you're saying, which is wonderful. It's been really nice to hear all of that, your knowledge and experience coming through, and I've certainly taken some away from the session, so really appreciate that, Kelly.
No, thank you for having me, and everybody, thank you for listening. It's quite often you do your day-to-day job, and then when someone asks you to explain it, you go, I don't know, I just do it. But actually, it's been really useful for me to unpick it as well. So it's been helpful.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to we'll draw the session to a close now. Obviously there's more, if you're coming back this afternoon, folks, there's more talks that are starting. I think the afternoon talks start at 1:15 now, so we've got a bit of time to have some lunch and come back together then in various rooms. So yeah, thank you everybody. You take care.
Thanks everyone.